Hey there, everybody. Thanks for joining. I have just had this article sent to me by 3 different individuals in the past hour. So I thought it would be more than important to take a few minutes to share this out with you and review some of the fantastic links. Most importantly, this page, this article, has been posted by the American Bar Association. And so many times we feel that the attorneys may be against shared parenting, but the more conversations that I have and other coaches have with attorneys, the fact is they don't know and they don't understand what to do about this. And there's attorneys that still don't even know that parental alienation is actually a thing. So let's take a look at this article by the American Bar Association. And this is a trauma caused by separation of children from their parents. This is a tool to help lawyers. And we're working on putting together a packet of information, if you will, that you can just provide to your attorney in the conversations then that happen with your ex's attorney and as you're navigating a contentious custody dispute. So let's take a look here. Now I'm just going to read this down. All right, this is a tool to help lawyers. Children are seriously harmed when they are separated from their parents. There has been quite a bit of research that proves that harm and outlines the specific ways that children are harmed. This tool is designed to help lawyers use that research in their advocacy. Whether you are a child welfare lawyer who wants to encourage a court to balance the harm of removing a child with the risk of abuse or neglect that the child faces by remaining in a home, a delinquency lawyer who wants to encourage a placement that preserves a child's relationship with their family, or an immigration lawyer who wants to emphasize the damage done when a child is separated from his or her parents. This information is laid out in a way that allows you to easily use the research. If you have additional resources to be added, or would you like to give feedback on this tool, there's a contact person, Kathy Krebs, linked in this article. And also, you know, when children have to be put in a situation where they're with one parent and not the other, what's happened is the children are essentially, they need to cut off 50% who they are, which obviously is going to cause a great deal of trauma. There's anger, there's confusion, and there's many research studies out there that talk about the uptick of substance abuse, repetitive abusive relationships, and suicide attempts, and unfortunately successes when kids are blocked in one way or another from contact with one of their parents. So let's take a look. This tool was created by the Children's Rights Litigation Committee of the American Bar Association section of litigation. Thank you to everyone who contributed to this document. And they have folks here from the US, let's see, including Massachusetts, more Massachusetts, and the American Bar Association Center on Children and the Law. This was just released. It's hitting the airwaves. And there's a disclosure here that the views expressed have not been approved by the House of Delegates or the Board of Governors of the ABA and shouldn't be taken as representing their policy. So some of the legalese for the legal practitioners. So when you scroll down a little bit further, there actually is a full memo in PDF. There's also a Microsoft Word version. an executive summary, and talking points. So let's take a look at the memo. We're going to open that up in another tab. Right, so this is a 30-page document. Talks about who created it. And we'll look at the summary. There's talking points. We get into the research and the information on harm resulting from separation of a parent and a child. There's resources for parents and children facing removal, the effects of toxic stress on children, as well as additional resources. Let's take a look. Executive summary. This memorandum provides a summary of the extensive research detailing the grave consequences that result when a child is separated from his or her parents. Part 2 sets forth talking points for use by trial and appellate lawyers during oral argument. These talking points distill the key themes and conclusions of the clinical and legal research set out in the balance of this memorandum. I think it's also important to note that while this document is geared for attorneys, this is also what I see part of an important packet that you put together for the mental health practitioners as well. Part 3 begins with a review of the clinical literature concerning the well-documented psychological and physical effects of removal generally. These resources find that the negative effects of removal often far outweigh the harm allegedly inflicted on the child by his or her parent. So this gets back to those who are involved in family court, a lot of allegations, a lot of accusations. Many times they're presented in a biased manner with no evidence, emotion without evidence, and the consequence of removing that child is more harmful than what is being thrown around in many cases, not all. Part 3 next reviews relevant case law and legal journal articles applying these clinical findings in cases involving removal or attempted removal. Because one of the original driving forces behind development of this memo was the federal government's policy of separating children from their parents at the border, the cases summarized in the memo generally concern challenges to that policy. The courts rely heavily on literature from the scientific and medical communities describing the negative effects of parent-child separation. And that is why when some target parents were talking about or citing that there's more attention being paid to the separation at the border than the separations that are happening in our courts, this is great because that discussion about the border is then the launch into the family courts. And it looks like that's what we're seeing here. Part 4 reviews literature discussing the effects of placement into foster care, which concludes that those effects are negative and substantial. So again, here's a document. The GALs, they need this in their hands also. The memorandum then reviews literature that may serve as a resource for parents facing a removal or who have already lost their children. Some of this literature provides guidance on healthy and effective parenting strategies. Other literature addresses the potential benefits of post-removal visitation, mental health counseling, and other social services. Look, we're looking for solutions here. Though not particularly useful for a memo of law in opposition to a removal petition, these resources may be helpful in counseling the client on practical actions he or she might take to protect the relationship with their child. We're turning the corner here, everybody. We're being proactive. Part 5. Part 5 reviews the literature regarding the physical effects of toxic stress, which is prevalent among children who are removed from the parental home. Also, for the children who are cut off from one of their parents, whether it's a judgment there in court or shared custody, that one parent, the pathogen, then takes it upon themselves to erase the bonds between the child and the other parent. It's all relevant. Finally, part 6 of the memorandum provides a listing of available additional resources assessing the effects of removal, including studies on the outcomes for children removed from the parental home and the long-term effects of the trauma that results from the removal. The long-term trauma that results from allowing one parent to be erased from their child's life. And then we get into part 2. Let's go back over. So we got that. We got the executive summary. We have our top points. Take a look. Here we go. Set forth below is a list of key talking points intended for potential use in oral argument before a trial or appellate court to encourage the court to consider how separating children from their family causes them significant trauma. Lawyers can use this research to encourage the courts to outweigh risks of remaining at home with the proven harm from separation of the family. So it gives us, at the time, it talks about the initial, at the time of the initial removal, although the courts focus on harm, risk, and best interests of the child, they cannot properly assess those factors without considering the scientifically established damage caused by removal from primary caretakers. So there's the removal by the courts. However, this is also about when you're going back to courts and that your ex is defying the court orders of shared parenting and infringing upon your parenting time. These talk points are relevant. We also have some cases. And scrolling down, we talk about harm from removal, clinical research, and they go right there onto page 2. Some great talk points. Harm from removal. Clinical research shows that children who are removed are overwhelmed with feelings of abandonment, rejection, worthlessness, guilt, and helplessness. Also, separation floods the stress hormones throughout the child's brain and body, which then leads to these health issues. Sleeping, difficulty with sleeping, regressing developmentally, heart disease, hypertension, obesity, diabetes. Their life is cut down. It also changes the way the child's brain is wired. Also, depression. Here we go. As I mentioned earlier, more suicide attempts, substance abuse, alcohol. There it is, gambling. When a parent is erased from a child and a child is erased from that parent, this is what's really happening. So pathogenic parent sees this as a win-lose and that they're winning the children, but this is the consequences of their fight to destroy the target parent. It is the children who suffer. Here we go. Children generally suffer worse outcomes when removed than if they had been allowed to remain in marginal homes. In studies of similar situated children, those that have social services involvement with the possibility of removal, children who were in fact removed, right, comparing those to who remained at home or those who remained with their parents. Okay, these kids who have a parent erased, children who are removed, delinquency rates higher, teen birth higher, lower incomes as adults because they are not as fully engaged in school because of all the stress, the depression, the anxiety that they are experiencing. Developmental delays, learning disabilities. Again, the brain is getting rewired even as children are older and this happens. Their brains are becoming rewired. If you're a target parent listening to this, or if you are a family member that has seen one parent being erased from the child's lives, look at the pictures of the children now, look at the pictures of the children a few years ago. They don't present the same, they don't look the same. Look at their eyes, look at their physical being as well. They are being changed from the inside and their brains are being rewired. And they're 6 times more likely to have behavioral problems in school, in social situations, higher levels of being impulsive, fringe behaviors. Again, there's that delinquency. As adults, these children, as they grow up, they're more likely to have substance abuse related disorders, psychotic or bipolar disorders, and depression and anxiety disorders. So a target parent, they want to break the cycle of abuse. They say enough is enough, never thinking that the other parent would turn their children into weapons, if you will, against the other parent. So in turn, in trying to break the cycle of abuse, it turns out it is going to continue, and if not ramp up, because of these mental health issues. As adults, these children who experience separation from a parent, they're going to have arrest rates 2 to 3 times higher than their peers. They're also more likely to have criminal convictions for violent offenses. There is a lot of hurt, there is a lot of anger that is not being dealt with, and they are being abused by proxy while they're in that one home all the time and not having that other influence. This is serious, folks. This is a document that not only needs to be provided to the attorneys, but also to the mental health practitioners and anyone that is in the mix of family courts and anyone who is counseling or working with children of divorce. So those were the talking points. Now, what we can do is go in further and take a look at research on the harm resulting from separation of parent and child. Here's an introduction. Here's scientific research on the effects of removal from parents generally. Here's case law, law journal articles, and then the effects of removal from the home, both parents, and putting them in foster care. And for those who are studying parental alienation or those who are experiencing it, fabulous research by Amy Baker, as well as many others, but she comes to mind off the top of my head here. Resources for parents and children facing removal. So here are some resources, removal resources in general, and then placement in kinship or in a family with another family member rather than a stranger. The effects of toxic stress on children. Here's the introduction, relevant research, and with Erasing Family, The film actually has a young adult taking the ACEs, the assessment of or adverse childhood experiences study. It's 10 questions. If you just go online, it's aces2high.org. You can find out more about that. All right, and additional resources. All right, resources exhibiting that separation does cause trauma. Studies on the long-term effects of trauma. Resources on family separation and trauma developed by the National Child Traumatic Stress Network. Studies conducted to assess child outcomes when removed from primary caregivers. Resources that identify the importance of family to a child's development and well-being, and guide to assist attorneys in child welfare practice. Wow, there is quite a bit here, folks. Quite a bit. This is definitely going to be shared not only today, but for a long time to come. Thanks for stopping by. Give us a thumbs up, hit subscribe. Our goal is to get to 1,000, and then we can do live streams from everywhere and anywhere. Please leave a comment and any additional relevant materials you think people could use that supports this. It's a movement. We're turning the corner, everybody, and kids will be coming home. You be well. God bless.